The orbital city of Aurum 9 floated like a crown above the planet below. Its towers were made of shining alloy and glass that reflected stars like jewels. This station was built for power, profit, and pride. Only the richest beings in the galaxy walked here without fear. Everyone else kept their head down. Vaylor Kryn moved through the Grand Market corridor in silence. He was an alien tycoon known across many systems. His companies controlled trade routes, mining rights, and energy flows. Entire worlds rose or fell because of his decisions. When his name appeared on contracts, governments listened. When he arrived in person, rooms became quiet. Yet today, Vaylor wore simple clothing and no guards. He wanted to feel invisible. The market was full of noise, merchants advertising rare tech, floating screens showing luxury items, and buyers laughing without worry. But beneath all that beauty there were cracks. Vaylor saw them clearly. He always had. Thin shadows near the walls, people who did not belong. That was when his eyes caught something that made his breath stop. A human boy stood near a waste-sorting gate at the edge of the market. The boy was small, thin, and dressed in worn clothes that had been repaired too many times. His shoes were mismatched. His hands moved carefully as he sorted broken machine parts for recycling credits. But Vaylor did not see the boy at first. He saw the bracelet. It rested loosely on the boy's wrist, old and scratched, but unmistakable. The metal had a unique curve, and the inner symbols were carved by hand, not machine. Vaylor knew every line of it. Because he had made it himself. The world around him faded, sounds became distant, time felt heavy. That bracelet was not meant to be here. It was forged decades ago, during a time Vaylor rarely thought about anymore. Back then, he was not yet powerful. He traveled to broken border worlds, making deals and learning how cruelty hid behind numbers. On one such world, he met a human woman. She was poor, sick, and standing between her child and starvation. Vaylor remembered how her hands shook when he offered help. She did not ask for money, she asked for safety, for hope. Vaylor had given her the bracelet as a promise. It carried an identity core, rare, valuable, and protected by ancient laws. Anyone wearing it was meant to be untouchable. He had told her he would return. He never did. Now, that same bracelet was worn by a child who looked like he had never known safety at all. Vaylor stopped walking. People behind him nearly collided, but no one dared complain. Something in his posture warned them away. He stood perfectly still, staring across the corridor. The human boy flinched as a security drone drifted closer. The drone scanned him, paused on the bracelet, then moved on. The boy let out a quiet breath of relief and continued working. Vaylor felt something twist painfully inside his chest. That bracelet should have opened doors. It should have brought protection, food, and shelter. Instead, it was surviving on a child who sorted trash in the richest station in the sector. Vaylor stepped closer. The boy noticed him and stiffened. Humans learned early to fear attention from powerful beings. The boy's fingers curled around the bracelet as if it were his only shield. "I'm not stealing," the boy said quickly, his voice soft but steady. "I just work here." Vaylor had faced war councils and criminal empires without hesitation. Yet now, words failed him. The boy looked up, eyes tired but sharp. There was intelligence there, and something else, quiet endurance. Vaylor slowly lowered himself to one knee. Gasps rippled through the market. An alien tycoon kneeling before a poor human child was unthinkable. Vaylor's voice came out low and careful. "What is your name?" The boy hesitated, then answered, "Eli." Vaylor nodded, swallowing hard. And in that moment, surrounded by wealth and watching a child who carried his forgotten promise, Vaylor Kryn realized something terrifying. For all his power, all his riches, and all his victories, he had failed at the one thing that mattered most. And the galaxy was about to feel the weight of that failure. Eli had never known safety. The orbital city of Aurum 9 gleamed above him like a palace of stars, but the alleys he called home smelled of rust, oil, and burned air. Every day was the same, searching for scraps, avoiding drones, and keeping his stomach from growling too loudly. Hunger was his constant companion, louder than fear, sharper than pain. The bracelet on his wrist was the only thing that belonged to him. It was old, cracked, and faded, but warm. His mother had told him that it carried the memory of someone who once cared. That someone had given it as a promise, a shield against cruelty. Now, with her gone, it was all Eli had left, a talisman against the emptiness of the world. Eli worked quickly, sorting broken droids and shattered tech, counting each piece of recycled metal as though it were treasure. His hands were raw and calloused, but careful. Every day, he imagined that one day someone would see him, would know him, and he would not be invisible anymore. He did not notice Valor at first. The alien Tycoon moved quietly through the bustling market, but his presence carried weight. The crowd seemed to bend around him, parting like water around a stone. Eli sensed eyes on him, heavy and unblinking, but he told himself it was just another passer-by. Then the moment came. Valor stopped, his gaze locked on the bracelet. For a heartbeat, the world froze. Eli felt the weight of it, though he did not understand why. The alien's eyes were wide, intense, not cruel, but full of something unfamiliar, shock, recognition, and sorrow. Eli instinctively pulled his hand closer to his chest. "It's mine," he said softly, not fully understanding why he needed to claim it. "My mother gave it to me." Valor knelt, his massive frame making the act seem impossible, almost humbling. The market fell silent around them. Merchants froze mid-sale. Drones hovered, confused. Even the stars outside the windows seemed to pause in anticipation. Your mother?" Valor's voice was almost a whisper, careful, fragile. "Her name was Lysa." Eli's eyes widened. How do you know that?" Valor exhaled slowly. Memories flooded him, dusty streets on a ruined world, the smell of smoke and starvation, Lysa's trembling hands as she accepted a gift she could not possibly hope to keep. He remembered her smile, small but radiant, like a star stubbornly shining in the dark. He remembered promising he would return, that she would not be alone. He had failed. Eli watched the alien's expression, sensing a weight far greater than anything he had ever carried. Valor's eyes, metal-colored and sharp, glimmered with something unexpected, regret, perhaps the kind that could pierce worlds. I promised her I would come back," Valor said quietly, his voice trembling. "I failed her, and now—" He looked down at the boy, at the small, fragile human who had survived where others would have fallen. "Now I see the result of my failure." Eli did not understand everything, but he felt the sincerity, the heavy truth in the alien's words. He had learned that people could fail, even powerful ones, yet the human heart could endure. He was the proof. Valor rose slightly, towering over Eli, but his voice softened. "I should have protected her. I should have protected you." "I'm okay," Eli whispered. "I survived." Valor shook his head. Survival alone was not enough. He had wealth, power, influence, but none of it could undo decades of absence. His empire, built on trade and conquest, could not shield a child from loneliness or grief. And yet, looking at Eli, he realized that perhaps there was still a chance to do something right. "I can help you," Valor said slowly, almost reluctantly. "Not just with scraps, not just with credits, I can give you a chance at life." Eli blinked, unsure if he should trust words spoken with such weight. Trust had always been dangerous for him. It had always ended in disappointment. But something about the alien, the sincerity, the humility in his posture, the way he had knelt, made Eli's heart whisper that this might be different. Valor extended a massive hand. "Will you let me try?" Eli looked down at his bracelet, tracing the etched symbols with a trembling finger. It was more than metal. It was a promise, a memory, a life thread connecting him to someone who had once cared. Perhaps he thought it could connect him to someone who still could. Okay," Eli said softly. Valor's hand hovered, waiting, and then he gently took it. For the first time in decades, the alien Tycoon felt the warmth of hope, not for profit, not for power, but for something far more precious: redemption. The stars outside Aurum 9 seemed to shine brighter, as if witnessing a new story beginning. A story where even the smallest, weakest humans could matter. and where even the most powerful alien could learn humility through the eyes of a child who had nothing but a worn bracelet and the courage to survive. For Eli, it was a moment that changed everything. For Valor, it was the beginning of reckoning. And for the galaxy, it was a quiet signal that even in the wealthiest, most indifferent places, kindness could not be forgotten. Valor led Eli through narrow corridors of Aurum 9 that the public rarely saw. The walls glimmered with embedded lights, and soft hums of machinery echoed like a distant heartbeat. To the casual observer, it was a palace of wealth, but Valor saw it differently. He saw the distance it created, the barriers it built between people. He saw the mistakes he had made when he thought power was protection. Eli walked quietly beside him, unsure of what to expect. He had survived the streets, the drones, the cruel merchants, and the constant hunger. But he had never survived someone like Valor, someone who carried the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. The Tycoon's presence was heavy, almost suffocating, yet oddly comforting. Valor gestured toward a room filled with soft light, overlooking the city below. Massive transparent windows showed the planet spinning slowly, oceans glinting beneath the stations that circled it. Here, no one would interrupt them. Here, they could speak without fear. "Tell me about your mother," Valor said, his voice low and careful, almost afraid to break the moment. Eli's lips pressed together for a moment. His memories were sharp, filled with grief and love in equal parts. She was small, but she always tried to make things better," he said. "Even when we had nothing, she found ways to care. She gave me this." He lifted the bracelet slightly, almost reverently. "She said someone gave it to her when we had no one. She said it meant someone believed in us." Valor swallowed hard. He remembered Lysa's face, her eyes bright despite the dirt and decay around her. She had trusted him with a piece of her life, with the hope that he would return. He had promised her safety and protection, and then he had abandoned her to the cruelty of the galaxy. "I gave this to her," Valor whispered almost to himself. "I told her she would never be alone. I promised I would come back." Eli's gaze met his. "Did you?" Valor looked away, ashamed. "No, I failed her. I failed you." His hands clenched at his sides, a rare sign of vulnerability. "I thought I could control everything, protect everyone with power, but I was blind. I didn't understand what mattered." The boy's silence filled the room. Eli did not speak, but his small hand tightened around the bracelet. It was as if he were holding together not just a piece of metal, but all the broken promises in the universe. Valor took a slow step closer. "I want to make it right," he said. "I want to give you what I should have given your mother, safety, a chance, a life where you don't have to hide, where you don't have to survive alone." Eli's voice trembled slightly. "Can you do that? Can anyone really fix what's broken?" Valor's eyes softened. "Not always, but I can try, I will try, and I will not fail again." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. For the first time, Valor did not feel the hum of power coursing through him. Instead, he felt something far more real, responsibility and the weight of years lost. Eli took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of hope settle in his chest. He had lived all his life believing that kindness was temporary, that promises were fragile. But looking at Valor, kneeling once before him, speaking with honesty and shame, he realized something. People could fail, people could abandon, but people could also return. People could make right what was wrong. Valor knelt slightly, though this time it was different, not as a gesture of apology, but of partnership. He offered not dominance, not wealth, but a chance to rebuild, to survive, and to grow. I will try to trust you," Eli whispered, the words barely audible. "But it's hard." "I know," Valor said softly. "I will not rush you. I only ask for the chance to be here, to be part of your life, nothing more." For the first time in decades, Valor Kryn felt the weight of humility and purpose mingling together. The galaxy, with all its empires and power struggles, could wait. For now, there was a child who needed him. There was a past he could not undo, but a future he could still shape. Eli looked at the bracelet once more, tracing its etched symbols. It was more than metal, more than a memory. It was a bridge between a failed promise and a second chance. And in that fragile human moment, something miraculous happened. Hope began to breathe again. Outside the windows, Aurum 9 sparkled, indifferent as always. But inside, two beings, one small, human, and one vast, alien, stood together, bound by something older than wealth, older than power, a promise waiting to be kept. Valor reached out not to control, but to protect. Eli allowed him, and in that touch, the past and present collided, creating a fragile but undeniable path toward redemption. Valor did not speak as they walked through the quieter halls of Aurum 9. The Tycoon had lived decades in command, making deals that bent worlds to his will, yet nothing in his life had prepared him for this. A small human child carrying the weight of a forgotten promise. Eli walked carefully beside him, his thin shoulders tense but steady, his eyes wide with curiosity and cautious hope. The bracelet on his wrist glimmered faintly under the soft station lights, like a tiny star reminding both of them of a connection that had survived time and neglect. They arrived in a chamber that overlooked the endless swirl of stars. The walls were transparent, the floor polished, and a low hum of energy pulsed quietly beneath their feet. Valor gestured toward a table where food had been laid out, fresh fruits, warm bread, and liquids rich with nutrients humans often could not afford. Eli hesitated, looking at it as if it might vanish before he could touch it. Hunger had taught him caution, but he dared to reach for a piece of bread, breaking it slowly and savoring every crumb. Valor watched in silence, studying the boy. Every movement, every bite spoke of survival and resilience. He had faced countless adversaries, hostile worlds, and cunning rivals, but nothing had shown him the quiet endurance of life like this child had displayed for years. Eli was alone in a galaxy built for power, yet he had survived. He had mattered. "Tell me everything," Valor said finally, his voice low, careful, and almost hesitant. "Every memory you can share, I need to understand." Eli swallowed, then began to speak. His words were steady, recounting his mother's kindness, their days spent scavenging, and the small victories that had kept them alive. He spoke of the bracelet, its warmth, and the stories his mother told him about the person who had given it to her. As Eli spoke, Valor felt the weight of decades pressing down on him. Every word was a mirror reflecting his own failures. He had promised Lysa protection and returned nothing but absence. And now her son, her living memory, carried the evidence of his mistake. "I could have given her more," Valor said, the words tasting bitter. "I could have returned when I promised. I could have ensured she had a life, and you wouldn't have had to struggle alone." Eli looked down, but his voice was calm. "I survived. That's what matters. My mother, she would have wanted me to keep going, no matter what." Valor shook his head. "It's not enough to survive. No child should have to survive alone, not like this, and I failed her." His massive hands clenched at his sides. "I have wealth beyond imagining. I can build cities, buy moons, even sway governments, but none of it can undo what I lost or what I failed to protect." Eli's eyes softened. "Then don't try to undo the past, just help me now." Valor nodded slowly. "I can do that. I can protect you. I can give you a life where you don't have to hide, where survival isn't the only choice. You'll have education, shelter, safety. You'll have freedom." The boy looked at him, cautious yet hopeful. "And the bracelet?" Valor's gaze dropped to the thin band of metal. "It stays with you. It always should. It's a reminder that someone once cared and that someone still does." Eli touched it lightly, feeling the warmth, the legacy of his mother, and now the promise of someone who had finally returned. I want that," he said softly. Valor felt something inside him shift. The galaxy had always been about trade, conquest, and power, but here in this small chamber he understood the true cost of promises. Protection and love could not be bought, only given, and he had squandered it once. Now he had a chance to correct it, not through money, not through empire, but through presence, through care, through action. They sat together quietly, watching stars drift endlessly outside. No contracts, no transactions, no threats. Just two beings, alien and human, bound by a fragile promise stretched across decades. Valor felt the years of regret weighing on him, but alongside it, something lighter began to grow. Purpose. "I will not fail you, Eli," Valor said firmly, the words carrying all the power he had accumulated over a lifetime. "I will protect you, guide you, and ensure you have a future worth living." Eli nodded slowly, feeling the first true safety he had known. It was not about wealth or grand words. It was about the quiet promise made real by presence. Outside, the stars continued to spin. Inside, a boy who had known nothing but survival and a tycoon who had forgotten what mattered most began to create something new. A life built on care, courage, and the weight of a promise finally kept. For the first time in decades, Vaylor Kryn felt something richer than empire. He felt redemption, and for Eli, he felt the safety of a future worth dreaming about. The galaxy beyond the windows could wait. Here now, something more precious had begun. A human and an alien learning that even in a universe of power and greed, the smallest acts of care could change everything. News traveled faster than Vaylor expected. A child wearing a bracelet that was once a secret artifact had appeared in the heart of Aurum 9. Word spread across networks, reaching trading conglomerates, rival tycoons, and planetary governments. Many saw it as a threat, a human holding proof of a secret gift tied to one of the wealthiest beings in the galaxy. Some whispered that it was a power move, others feared rebellion. Vaylor did not react immediately. He had faced threats before, pirates, corporations, and even entire planetary systems that tried to manipulate him. But this was different. This time, it was not about profit or conquest. It was about the safety of a human child, the last living link to a promise he had once made and broken. And the universe was not ready to let that happen quietly. Eli, meanwhile, felt the tension around him. He noticed the whispers in the corridors, the cautious stares from merchants, and the curious drones hovering just a little longer than necessary. He had grown used to being invisible, to blending in and avoiding attention. But now, the attention was unavoidable, and it scared him. The bracelet, once a quiet symbol of memory, had become a beacon. Vaylor took Eli to a secure chamber far from public eyes. "They will not understand," he said quietly, watching the monitors. "Many will see you as leverage, not as a child." Eli's small hands clenched around the bracelet. "I just want to live," he whispered. "I didn't ask for this." Vaylor nodded, understanding completely. "I know, but they will come. They will challenge us. You are more than a child. They see you as a threat, and threats must be eliminated or controlled." Across the galaxy, systems debated. Some demanded the bracelet be seized immediately. Others sent envoys to Aurum 9, insisting Vaylor hand over the human child. Corporate boards called emergency meetings. Mercenary groups began mobilizing. Even the Council of Aurum 9 sent representatives, their voices clipped and formal, demanding explanations. Vaylor refused them all. He issued public statements, revealing records that had been long hidden, proof of human worlds stripped by corrupt corporations, proof of exploitation, proof that even someone like him could make a difference if he chose to. Markets reeled, rivals seethed, and councils argued. Many expected chaos, maybe even war, but Vaylor did not flinch. His attention remained on the child who had survived so much, and on the promise he now intended to honor. Eli watched as the galaxy around him reacted. He had seen violence, greed, and indifference all his life. But now he saw something else: courage. Not the kind that wielded weapons, but the kind that stood against the weight of billions to protect something fragile and human. "Is this because of me?" Eli asked, his voice quiet, almost afraid that admitting it might make him a burden. Vaylor knelt slightly, placing his massive hand gently on Eli's shoulder. "No, it is because of humanity," he said. "Because even one child deserves protection, and because I forgot what it meant to care until now." The monitors displayed protests, financial instability, and angry rivals, but Vaylor ignored them. They were loud but empty. What mattered was here in this room, in the human boy's eyes, in the bracelet that survived decades, and in the promise he could finally keep. Eli slowly exhaled. "It feels scary," he admitted, "but I trust you." Vaylor felt a strange relief, tempered with a heavier burden. Trust was fragile, but it was also a foundation. He had risked empires to correct a past mistake. He would risk them all again if needed. "Then we face it together," Vaylor said firmly. "Whatever comes, I will protect you. You will not face this alone." Outside the windows, Aurum 9 shimmered under the light of distant stars. Traders argued, drones hovered, and the galaxy buzzed with rumor and speculation. But within the walls of that chamber, two lives, one alien, one human, were forging something stronger than fear or power, a bond built on choice, courage, and care. For Eli, it was the first time in his life he felt seen, not as property or as a statistic, but as a being who mattered. For Vaylor, it was a reckoning with his own failings, a reminder that true strength was not measured in wealth or armies, but in the willingness to protect and nurture life. And as the galaxy braced itself for the storm, Vaylor and Eli held the quiet truth. Even in a universe built on greed and indifference, one promise kept could change everything. The stars beyond Aurum 9 burned as usual, but for the first time, someone small and someone powerful stood together, unafraid and ready to face what came next. The Council of Aurum 9 arrived expecting a show of control. They came in sleek vessels, adorned with emblems of authority, armed with words sharper than any blade. They believed they would confront a Tycoon bowing under pressure, a human child nothing more than a pawn. But what they found surprised them. Eli stood beside Vaylor, small but unwavering, his thin frame radiating something the Council had underestimated: courage. The bracelet gleamed on his wrist, worn and scratched, yet defiant, a symbol that connected past and present. His eyes met the Council members without fear, and in that moment he claimed a presence that no power or title could dismiss. "My mother gave me this," Eli said quietly, yet clearly, addressing the Council directly. "She said it meant someone once cared. If that scares you, maybe that's the problem." A hush fell over the room. The Council members, used to intimidation and manipulation, struggled to respond. No force, no argument could shake the truth in the boy's words. He was not asking for wealth. He was not demanding power. He was standing simply as a human being, asserting his right to live, to exist, and to be protected. Vaylor stood behind him, towering and imposing, yet he made no move of aggression. He understood that the lesson was not in showing dominance, but in letting humanity shine. He saw in Eli the same resilience he had once admired in Lysa, the woman who had trusted him decades ago. He had failed her, but perhaps he could succeed through her child. The Council tried again, their voices rising, questioning the legality, the ownership, the ancient protocols tied to the bracelet. Eli did not flinch. "This isn't about law or power, it's about life," he said. "About someone remembering that we matter." Whispers ran through the chambers. Humans across the galaxy watched transmissions of this moment, seeing for the first time a child standing unafraid before overwhelming authority. For many, it was a revelation. Courage was not always wielded with weapons. It could shine quietly in defiance, in honesty, in the refusal to bow to fear. Vaylor placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. "You are right," he said softly, speaking both to the boy and to the Council. "Power means nothing without responsibility. Authority without care is hollow. This human, reminds us all what we have forgotten." The Council, faced with the undeniable strength of truth and the weight of public attention, faltered. They could not act without scrutiny, and scrutiny now favored compassion. Reluctantly, they withdrew, leaving Vaylor and Eli standing side by side. No decree could erase the moment. No law could diminish the courage it took for a child to claim his place in a galaxy that often ignored the powerless. Eli exhaled, feeling the tension release like air escaping from a sealed chamber. He had faced threats all his life: starvation, exploitation, neglect. But this was different. This was a recognition that he existed, that he mattered, and that someone powerful had chosen to stand with him. Vaylor's eyes softened as he looked at him. He saw more than a child. He saw hope, perseverance, and the enduring spark of humanity that no empire could destroy. The bracelet, fragile and worn, was not just a piece of metal anymore. It was proof that one life remembered could influence thousands, even millions. The galaxy outside the station continued its rhythm, indifferent to small victories, yet something subtle had shifted. The story of a human child standing tall beside an alien Tycoon spread quietly through networks and broadcasts. Across countless worlds, humans watched and felt a sense of recognition. One of their own had spoken, and for the first time, power listened. Vaylor stepped forward, placing a protective hand lightly over Eli. "You have shown what humans can do when they refuse to be invisible," he said. "Courage is not measured by strength alone. It is measured by standing, even when the universe expects you to fall." Eli smiled faintly, feeling both exhausted and empowered. For years, he had believed that survival was all he could hope for. Now he realized that standing, claiming his life, and speaking truth could ripple across the galaxy in ways he never imagined. The council departed, leaving silence in their wake. Vaylor and Eli remained together, watching the stars drift past Aurum 9 windows. The market below hummed with the usual noise, but the two of them shared a quiet understanding that life, courage, and hope could not be bought or commanded. They had to be nurtured and defended. And in that quiet moment, a small human boy, once invisible and powerless, stood tall, teaching even the richest alien in the galaxy that bravery could shine brightest in the most unlikely places. Years passed, and Aurum 9 began to change. Slowly, quietly, almost imperceptibly at first, the station that had been built for wealth and power shifted. Humans who once scavenged for scraps now lived in small but secure homes. Education centers replaced derelict recycling pits. Markets still buzzed, but they hummed differently. Hope had found a place among the commerce. Eli grew into a young man, strong not because of power or riches, but because of survival and trust. The bracelet remained on his wrist, worn and scarred, a symbol of memory, resilience, and connection. It was not a shield against violence anymore. It was a reminder that kindness, once given, could ripple through decades, across galaxies, and change lives. Vaylor watched him from afar at first, then closer, as they spent days rebuilding trust and creating opportunities for humans who had been forgotten. The Tycoon had once ruled through fear and commerce. Now he led through protection and care. His empire had shrunk, yes, but in its place grew something greater, a legacy not of wealth, but of change. One evening, Vaylor found Eli standing at the observation deck, looking out at the stars. The soft glow of distant planets reflected in his eyes. Eli turned slightly when he sensed Vaylor's presence. "It's beautiful," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Yes," Vaylor said, standing beside him, "and it is only the beginning." Eli looked at him, eyes steady. "You came back. You kept your promise, even when it seemed impossible." Vaylor shook his head gently, a rare humility in his gaze. "I did not deserve to, but you reminded me what matters. You reminded me that power without care is nothing, that promises, even broken ones, can still be honored if we try." The bracelet gleamed faintly under the starry light, a symbol of that effort. Eli touched it, feeling the warmth, the memory of his mother, and the presence of Vaylor, who had returned not for profit, but for something far greater. Around the station, humans who had once been invisible now walked with pride. They taught, created, and helped each other. Systems that Vaylor once exploited were being rebuilt under careful guidance. Where greed had once ruled, care was beginning to take root, and it all traced back to a single act of recognition. The moment an alien tycoon saw a child with a bracelet and remembered a promise he had failed to keep. Vaylor and Eli often sat together, talking late into the artificial night of Aurum 9. They discussed education, rebuilding colonies, and creating networks that would ensure humans could thrive. Eli grew into a leader, not because he sought it, but because he inspired it. People followed him, trusted him, and saw in him the same endurance and courage that had allowed him to survive his early years. On the day Vaylor stepped down from his role in the corporate councils, he met Eli beneath open stars. The city hummed softly below, full of life and possibility. "I failed once," Vaylor said, his voice low but steady. "I left too many people behind. I left you behind." Eli smiled, placing a hand over the worn bracelet. "You came back. You stayed. You did more than you should have had to." Vaylor felt a weight lift from him, decades of regret eased by the resilience of a single human life. "You taught me more than I ever thought possible," he admitted. "The galaxy can be harsh, but humanity endures. It adapts. It remembers kindness even when we think it is lost." Eli looked up at the stars, thinking of his mother, the life he had lived, and the future he now faced. "And we will make sure others know it too," he said softly. "That kindness matters, that people matter." Vaylor nodded. "Yes, and because of that, perhaps the galaxy will be a little brighter." They stood together in silence, looking at Aurum 9 and the infinite space beyond, understanding that even the smallest acts of care could reshape worlds. The bracelet, thin and scarred, gleamed quietly on Eli's wrist, a symbol of past promises, survival, and the possibility of redemption. And across the stars, a quiet truth spread. Humans remembered kindness longer than empires lasted. They endured because they cared, because they stood, because even in a universe built on greed, courage, and compassion could change everything. For Valor, redemption was found not in wealth, not in titles, but in the life of a child who survived, learned, and thrived. For Eli, the gift of a bracelet had returned more than safety. It had returned hope, purpose, and the knowledge that one life could make a galaxy remember what truly mattered. The stars above Aurum 9 continued to shine, indifferent yet witness to the transformation below. And in the quiet brilliance of that moment, alien and human together understood that some gifts were meant not for power, but for life itself.